Part 1. The Living Ghost. You've heard this saying 1,000 times. Time heals all wounds. It's a comforting thought. It suggests that if you just wait long enough, if you just put enough distance between yourself and that terrible thing that happened, the pain will fade. The memories will soften. You'll go back to being who you were. But if you are listening to this, you probably know that is a lie. For a significant number of people, time doesn't heal. Time conceals. Imagine walking down a street on a perfectly sunny Tuesday. You're safe, you're an adult, maybe you're on your way to a job you like or to meet a friend. Suddenly, a car backfires half a block away. In a split second, before your conscious mind even registers the sound as a car, your body has already reacted. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. Your stomach drops. Your palms are slick with sweat. You feel an overwhelming urge to run, or maybe you feel paralyzed, unable to move a muscle. The sunny Tuesday is gone. You aren't on your way to meet a friend anymore. Physiologically, biologically, you are back there. You are back in the war zone. You are back in that house with the angry parent. You are back in the moment of the accident. This is the fundamental discovery of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's work, and it is the foundation of everything we are going to talk about in this series. Trauma is not just a memory. It is not a story about something that happened in the past. Trauma is a physiological reality that is happening inside your body right now. The body keeps the score. Welcome to this masterclass on trauma, healing, and the science of reclaiming your life. Over the next 10 sessions, we are going to dismantle the mystery of why you feel the way you feel. We are going to move away from the idea that you are broken or weak, and we are going to look at the hard science of survival, because that is what you are doing. You are surviving. Today, in part 1, we have to start by redefining what trauma actually is. Most of us think of trauma as an event, a car crash, an assault, a natural disaster. And yes, those are traumatic events, but the trauma itself isn't the event. The trauma is what happens inside you as a result of that event. Dr. van der Kolk explains that for most people, when something bad happens, our brain processes it. We talk about it. We cry. We sleep on it. Slowly, the event becomes a memory. It becomes a story we can tell. We can say, yes, that happened 10 years ago, and it was awful, but it's over. But for the traumatized person, the brain fails to process the event into a story. It doesn't get filed away in the past cabinet. Instead, the sensations of that moment, the images, the sounds, the physical pain, the terror, get stuck. They get frozen in the nervous system. Think of it like a record skipping. The music doesn't move forward. It just repeats the same jagged note over and over. This is why talk therapy feels frustrating for people with deep trauma. You can sit on a couch and tell the story of what happened to you 100 times. You can understand why it happened. You can rationalize it. You can forgive the people involved. But then you smell a certain cologne, or you hear a voice raised in anger, or you feel trapped in a crowded elevator and your body betrays you. The panic returns as if you learned nothing. This happens because the rational part of your brain, the part that understands time and logic, isn't the part running the show. The part running the show is much older, much deeper, and it doesn't speak English. It speaks in sensation. It speaks in adrenaline and cortisol. I want you to pause for a moment and check in with yourself. How does your body feel right now? Are your shoulders up by your ears? Is your jaw clenched? Is there a tightness in your chest or a heaviness in your gut? We spend so much of our lives trying to ignore these signals. We drink coffee to override the fatigue. We take pills to dampen the anxiety. We scroll through our phones to distract ourselves from the emptiness. We treat our bodies like unruly vehicles that we have to force into submission. But your body is trying to tell you something. It is holding on to a history that your mind might have tried to erase. One of the most profound insights in Dr. van der Kolk's research comes from his work with veterans. He noticed that these men, who were strong, capable soldiers, were living their lives as if they were still in combat. They weren't just remembering the war, they were physically reliving it. He talks about a patient who, 20 years after Vietnam, still couldn't walk through a market without scanning the rooftops for snipers. His mind knew he was in Boston, but his body was in the jungle. This is what we call the living ghost. The ghost isn't the memory of the person you lost or the thing that hurt you. The ghost is the past living in your present body. It haunts your muscles, your gut, your heart rate. It changes the way you perceive the world. When you are traumatized, your world shrinks. You stop taking risks. You stop trying new things because new things are unpredictable, and unpredictable feels dangerous. You might find yourself becoming rigid, controlling, or numb. You might find that you can't really feel joy, or connection, or love. You just feel guarded. And the tragedy is, we often blame ourselves for this. We think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just relax? Why am I so difficult? If there is one thing I want you to take away from this first session, it is this. Your reactions are not a character flaw. They are a biological adaptation. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to keep you safe. When you went through that overwhelming experience, your brain made a decision. It decided that the world is dangerous and that you need to be ready to fight or run at a moment's notice. It recalibrated your alarm system to be incredibly sensitive. Imagine a smoke detector. A good smoke detector goes off when there is a fire, but a traumatized smoke detector goes off when you burn the toast, or when you light a candle, or sometimes just because the room gets a little too hot. It's exhausting to live in a house where the alarm is constantly ringing. But here is the good news, and there is good news. Since this is a biological issue and not just a mental one, we can change it. But we cannot change it just by thinking. We have to change it by working with the body. Dr. van der Kolk's research shows us that the brain is neuroplastic. It can be rewired. We can recalibrate that smoke detector. We can teach the body that the danger has passed. We can help the ghost find peace. This journey requires courage. It requires you to be willing to feel things that you have spent a long time avoiding. It requires you to be patient with yourself. In the next part, we are going to open up the hood and look at the engine. We are going to look at the specific parts of your brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and understand exactly what happens during a hijack. We are going to explain why you can be a brilliant, rational person and yet lose all ability to think clearly when you get triggered. It's not because you're crazy. It's because of the specific way your brain is wired for survival. For now, I want you to try something simple. It's a small step towards befriending your body. Sit comfortably. Put your feet flat on the floor. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Count to 4. Hold it for a second. Now, exhale slowly through your mouth. Count to 6. Make the exhale longer than the inhale. Do that again. In for 4. Out for 6. Notice what happens. Notice if your shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. Notice if the noise in your head gets a little bit quieter. That is the beginning of safety. That is you telling your body, it's okay, we are here, we are safe. The body keeps the score, yes, but you can change the game. I'll see you in the next session, where we enter the Watchtower. Part 2. The Smoke Detector and the Watchtower. I want you to recall the last time you truly lost your temper. Maybe you were arguing with your partner. It started small, perhaps about the dishes or the schedule, but then they said that one specific thing, that one phrase that hit a nerve. Suddenly, the room changed. Your vision narrowed. Your heart started pounding in your ears. You felt a surge of heat up your neck. You said things you didn't mean. You screamed. Or maybe you shut down completely, went cold, and stormed out. 10 minutes later, you're sitting in your car or in the other room, shaking, and the thought comes, why did I do that? That was irrational. I love this person. Why did I act like they were my enemy? You feel guilty. You feel crazy. You promise yourself it won't happen again. But it does happen again. Welcome to part 2. Today we are going to answer the question, why does my rational brain turn off exactly when I need it the most? To understand trauma, we have to become amateur neuroscientists. We have to understand the architecture of the brain, because once you understand the machinery, you stop blaming the operator. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk uses a very powerful metaphor to explain this architecture. He describes 2 key players in your head, the smoke detector and the Watchtower. Let's start with the smoke detector. This is your amygdala. It's a small almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep inside your brain. It is ancient. It is the survival brain. Its only job, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is to ask one question: is this safe? The amygdala is fast. It is lightning fast. It processes information milliseconds before the rest of your brain even knows what's happening. If you see a snake in the grass, your amygdala makes you jump back before your conscious mind even registers the word snake. It doesn't care about logic. It doesn't care about social niceties. It cares about keeping you alive. Then we have the Watchtower. This is the medial prefrontal cortex. This is located right behind your forehead. This is the part of you that makes you human. It allows you to observe things objectively. It understands time. It knows that now is different from then. It helps you plan, predict consequences, and control your impulses. In a healthy brain, these 2 parts work together in a balance. Here is how it normally works. Information comes in through your senses: eyes, ears, skin. It goes to a part of the brain called the thalamus. Think of the thalamus as the cook. The cook takes all the ingredients, sights, sounds, smells, and stirs them into a soup called "What is happening to me right now?" The cook sends this soup in 2 directions. He sends a scoop up to the Watchtower, the rational brain. The Watchtower tastes it and says, I hear a loud bang, but I also see fireworks in the sky. It is the 4th of July. This is safe. No need to panic. At the same time, the cook sends a scoop down to the smoke detector. Because the Watchtower has identified the sound as fireworks, it sends a signal down to the smoke detector saying, stand down. It's just a celebration. Your heart rate stays steady. You enjoy the show. But in a traumatized brain, this system breaks. When you have experienced deep trauma, your smoke detector becomes hypersensitive. The calibration is off. It doesn't just react to fire, it reacts to smoke, to heat, to dust, to a sunny day that feels a little too warm. And here is the critical failure point: the low road. When the smoke detector senses a threat, a raised voice, a slamming door, a look of rejection, it doesn't wait for the Watchtower to give its opinion. It panics. It hits the big red button. It floods your body with stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. It prepares you to fight or flee. And, this is the most important part, it cuts the connection to the Watchtower. Physiologically, when you are triggered, blood flow actually decreases in the frontal lobes of your brain. The Watchtower goes dark. The lights go out. This is why you can't reason with someone who is in a trauma response. This is why you can't reason with yourself when you are triggered. You literally do not have access to the part of your brain that understands logic, time, or consequence. You are operating entirely from the amygdala. You are a 200-pound animal trying to survive a predator. So when you snap at your partner because they used a tone of voice that reminded you of your abusive father, you aren't responding to your partner. Your Watchtower, which knows this is your loving partner, is offline. Your smoke detector is fighting your father. Dr. van der Kolk calls this the speechless terror. Often, when people relive trauma, the area of the brain responsible for speech, Broca's area, also shuts down. You might find that when you get overwhelmed, you literally cannot find the words. You stammer, you go mute. This is not stubbornness. This is a stroke-like symptom caused by the trauma response. So what is the result of living this way? If your smoke detector is constantly ringing, your watchtower never gets a chance to lead. You live in a constant state of reaction. You might interpret neutral faces as angry. You might interpret silence as abandonment. You might interpret a suggestion as an attack. And because the watchtower is offline, you can't tell the difference between then and now. The amygdala has no concept of time. It doesn't know that the war ended 20 years ago. It doesn't know that you are now 40 years old and safe in your own home. When it gets triggered, it thinks the danger is happening right now. This explains the exhaustion. Think about how much energy it takes to be on guard every second of every day, to constantly scan the room, to monitor people's moods, to check the exits. Your body is running a marathon while you are sitting on the couch. This brings us to a difficult truth, but a necessary one. Understanding this biology helps us let go of the shame. You are not a bad person for losing your temper. You are not weak for feeling anxious in a crowd. You have a biological injury. Your alarm system is stuck in the on position. But understanding the machinery also brings a challenge. We can't fix this problem just by talking to the watchtower. We can't just tell ourselves, I shouldn't be afraid. The watchtower isn't the problem. The watchtower agrees with you. The problem is the smoke detector, and the smoke detector doesn't speak English. It doesn't listen to logic. So how do we talk to it? We have to speak its language. The language of the amygdala is sensation. It listens to the body, not the mind. This is why in this course, we are going to focus heavily on bottom-up processing. Top-down means using your mind to calm your body. That works sometimes, but when the alarm is ringing loud, we need bottom-up methods. We need to use the body to calm the mind. We need to show the amygdala through breath, through movement, through touch, that we are safe now. In the next session, we are going to explore what happens when this alarm rings for too long. We are going to talk about the people who don't explode, but who implode, the people who shut down, numb out, and drift away. We're going to talk about the high cost of not feeling. For today, I want you to practice noticing the hijack. At some point in the next few days, you'll feel that shift. You'll feel that heat, that tightening. You'll feel the urge to react. Try just for a split second to catch it. Say to yourself, my smoke detector just went off. My watchtower is flickering. Don't try to stop it. Just name it. Naming it is the first step to turning the lights on. I'll see you in Part 3. Part 3. Numbing the pain versus feeling the life. Imagine you are at a party. It's a celebration, maybe a wedding or a big promotion for someone you care about. Everyone around you is laughing. Glasses are clinking. There's a warmth in the room. You can see that people are happy. Intellectually, you know you should be happy too, but you feel nothing. It's as if you were watching the event through thick glass. You're a spectator. You see the smiles, but you don't feel the joy resonate in your own chest. You feel distant, floaty, maybe even a little bored. Later, you might go home and feel a vague sense of guilt. Why am I like this? Why can't I just connect? Or perhaps it happens in reverse. Perhaps something sad happens, a loss, a disappointment. You expect to cry. You wait for the wave of grief, but it doesn't come. You just feel flat, empty, like a vacant house. Welcome to Part 3. Today, we are going to talk about the opposite of the hijack we discussed last time. We are going to talk about what happens when the noise becomes too much and the system simply shuts down. We're going to talk about numbing. In clinical terms, what I just described, that inability to identify or connect with your own emotions, is often called Alexithymia. It's a Greek term. It literally means no words for feelings. Dr. Bessel Kolk found that a shocking number of traumatized people live their lives in this state. They don't know what they feel because they can't feel what they feel. If you ask someone with alexithymia, how do you feel right now? They might look confused. They might say, I feel fine, even if they are shaking. Or they might describe physical symptoms instead of emotions. My stomach hurts, or I'm tired. They have lost the connection between their physical sensations and their emotional meaning. Why does this happen? Let's go back to our smoke detector analogy from the last session. Imagine your internal alarm system has been ringing non-stop for years. You are living in a war zone, or an abusive home, or under constant threat. Your body is flooded with adrenaline day in and day out. Eventually, the body cannot sustain that level of arousal. It is biologically impossible to stay in fight or flight forever. You would burn out. So, the nervous system has a backup plan, a failsafe. If you cannot fight the predator and you cannot flee from the predator, what is the only option left for survival? You freeze, you collapse, you play dead. Think of the opossum. When it is terrified, it goes limp. Its heart rate drops, its breathing becomes shallow. It disconnects from the reality of what is happening to it so that it doesn't have to feel the pain of being eaten alive. This is dissociation. It is the ultimate defensive strategy. It is your brain saying, "This is too much. I am logging off." And it works. It's a brilliant survival mechanism during the trauma. It allows you to endure the unendurable by mentally checking out. But here's the tragedy and the central focus of today's session. When the trauma is chronic, when it goes on for a long time, especially in childhood, this checking out becomes a habit. It becomes your default state of being. The smoke detector is still ringing, but you have severed the speaker wires. You don't hear the noise anymore, but you don't hear music either. This is the terrible bargain of trauma recovery. You cannot selectively numb pain. If you numb yourself to fear, to anger, to sadness, you also numb yourself to joy, to excitement, to love, to passion. You become a zombie. You are walking around, going through the motions of life, but you aren't really alive. Dr. van der Kolk writes poignantly about patients who engage in extreme behaviors just to feel something. They might drive recklessly. They might engage in high-risk sexual behavior. They might self-harm. When you ask them why they cut themselves, the answer is rarely that they want to die. The answer is often, "I just wanted to know I was still here. I wanted to see the blood to prove I am alive." The numbness is more terrifying than the pain. This disconnection extends beyond emotions. It often extends to the most basic physical sensations. Many traumatized people have a very poor relationship with their own bodies. They don't notice when they are hungry until they are starving. They don't notice when they are cold until they are shivering. They don't notice they need to use the restroom until it's an emergency. They live entirely in their heads, treating their body like a distant, troublesome relative they try to ignore. So, if you are listening to this and recognizing yourself in this description, the flatness, the emptiness, the distance from others, I want you to hear this. This is not who you are. This is what happened to you. Your inability to feel is not a moral failing. It was a necessary adaptation to an impossible situation. It saved your sanity back then, but now it's costing you your life. The goal of healing, according to Dr. van der Kolk, is not just to stop the pain, it's to gain the capacity to feel fully alive in the present moment. So, how do we wake up the zombie? How do we reconnect the wires? It is terrifying to start feeling again after years of being numb. When the anesthesia wears off, the first thing you feel is usually pain. If you have spent 20 years pushing down rage or terror or grief, the moment you open that door, it's not going to be a gentle trickle. It's going to feel like a tsunami. This is why we must go slowly. We do not rip the bandage off. The path back to feeling isn't usually through talk therapy, at least not initially. You cannot talk someone out of being numb. The path back is through the senses. We have to help your brain relearn how to interpret the signals from your body without being overwhelmed by them. We start with the very basics of physical existence. In his clinic, Dr. van der Kolk often doesn't start by asking patients about their trauma. He starts with something surprisingly simple. He might toss them a beach ball. Why? Because to catch a ball, you have to be present. You have to see it coming. You have to move your hands. You have to feel the impact on your palms. For that split second, you are in your body,
in the now. We are trying to build what is called interoception. Interoception is your ability to feel what is happening inside your own skin. It's the opposite of alexithymia. It's the ability to say, I feel a tightness in my throat right now, and I know that tightness means I am feeling sad. Connecting the sensation to the emotion. If you can't do that yet, that's okay. We start smaller. Here is your practice for this session. It's an exercise in low-stakes sensing. In the next day or two, I want you to do something delightful for your senses, something that has nothing to do with trauma. Go to a bakery and just smell the bread. Don't think about it. Just let the smell hit your nose. Take a shower and really focus on the temperature of the water on your skin. Is it hot? Is it warm? Where do you feel it most? Pet an animal. Notice the texture of their fur under your fingers. Don't try to feel emotions about these things. Don't analyze them. Just notice the physical sensation. We are gently tapping on the door of the body, saying, hello in there, is it safe to come out yet? We are trying to prove to your amygdala that you can feel a sensation without it being a threat. It's a slow process. It's thawing out frostbite. It tingles and sometimes it hurts, but it is the only way back to warmth. In the next episode, we are going to go deeper into why traditional methods fail us. We're going to look at why you can't just tell the story and be healed. We're going to explore the idea that the body is the scene of the crime and the memory is stored in the tissues, not just the mind. I'll see you in Part 4.
Part 4. The body as the scene of the crime. I want you to imagine a detective walking onto a crime scene. The detective looks around, they take notes, they interview the witnesses, they write up a detailed report stating exactly what happened, at what time, and who was involved. They file the report in a cabinet. The case is closed. This is how your rational brain, your Watchtower, deals with memories. It is an efficient bureaucrat. It files the past away so you can move on. But now imagine that the crime scene itself, the floorboards, the walls, the windows, never got the memo that the case was closed. Imagine that every time the wind blows, the floorboards scream. Imagine that the walls are still vibrating from the impact. The report is filed away perfectly in the office, but the house itself is still holding the chaos. Welcome to Part 4. Today, we are going to confront a frustrating reality for many people seeking healing. Why can you understand your trauma perfectly, yet still feel completely controlled by it? Why does traditional talk therapy, sitting in a chair and explaining your childhood, sometimes hit a brick wall? The answer lies in understanding that your body is the scene of the crime, and the body has a completely different memory system than your mind. Dr. Bessel Kolk makes a critical distinction between two types of memory. Explicit memory is what we usually think of as memory. It is the story. It is the timeline. It is governed by the hippocampus, the brain's historian. If I ask you what you had for dinner last Tuesday or where you went on vacation in 2015, you are accessing explicit memory. You can describe it with words. You can look at it from a distance. It feels like the past. Implicit memory is different. It is much older. It is not a story, it is a sensation. Implicit memory is the smell of rain. It is the muscle memory of riding a bike. It is the instant recoil of your hand from a hot stove. It doesn't involve words or timelines. It involves physical survival. Here is the crux of the problem. When a traumatic event occurs, when the stress hormones flood the system, the hippocampus, the historian, often goes offline. The stress is too high for it to record the story properly. But the amygdala and the body, they are recording everything in high definition. They record the tightness in your chest, the sound of the glass breaking, the smell of the cologne, the feeling of being trapped. So later on, you might not have a clear linear story of what happened, or maybe you do. Maybe you have the police report memorized, but your body is holding the implicit memory. This is why you can be sitting in a therapist's office, calmly describing a horrific accident, and sound perfectly rational. Your explicit memory is working fine. You're telling the story. But while you're speaking, your heart rate might be 120 beats per minute. Your palms might be sweating. Your digestion might shut down.
Your mind is telling the story of the past, but your body is living the reality of the present. The body keeps the score. It holds the evidence. This explains why talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy has limits when it comes to deep trauma. Talk therapy is a top-down approach. It tries to use the logic of the upper brain to calm the panic of the lower brain. It assumes that if we change your thoughts, we can change your feelings. And for many things, that works beautifully. If you are stressed about a job interview, talk therapy is great. You can rationalize the fear. But trauma is not a thought. Trauma is a physiological reflex. You cannot talk your body out of a reflex. If I throw a ball at your face, you will blink and flinch. I can't talk you out of flinching. I can't say, now rationally, you know the ball won't hurt you because it is soft. By the time I say that, you've already flinched. The flinch is faster than the thought. This is why so many trauma survivors feel like failures in therapy. They go week after week. They analyze their childhoods. They have breakthroughs where they understand why they are messed up. They gain all this insight, and then they go home, get triggered by a small rejection, and spiral into the exact same panic attack they've had for 10 years. They think, I know better. Why am I doing this? I must be broken. You aren't broken. You're just using the wrong tool for the job. You're trying to use a map, words, to fix the terrain, the body. Dr. van der Kolk argues that to heal trauma, we have to go bottom up. We have to visit the scene of the crime, the body, and change the way it reacts. We have to help the body realize that the crime is over. The bad thing isn't happening anymore. How do we do that? We have to reconnect the feeling brain with the thinking brain. Remember how we talked about the Watchtower going dark? The goal is to keep the Watchtower online while we feel the sensations in the body. This is the essence of somatic work. It might look like this. Instead of asking, why are you angry, which invites a story, we ask, where do you feel that anger in your body right now? You might say, I feel a heat in my chest and a clenching in my jaw. Okay, now we're working with the evidence. We stay with that sensation. We breathe into it. We notice it without trying to fix it or explain it away. We just observe it. I notice my jaw is tight. By doing this, you're doing something revolutionary. You are having a traumatic sensation without running away from it. You're proving to your body that you can tolerate this feeling. And slowly, as you stay with it, the jaw relaxes, the heat dissipates, the wave passes, and your brain learns, oh, I survived that feeling. It didn't kill me. That's how the memory gets processed, not by talking about the past, but by feeling the physical residue of the past in the safety of the present. This is why things like yoga, theater, dance, and massage can sometimes be more effective for trauma than years of conversation. They bypass the story and go straight to the tissues. They release the physical tension that has been held in the muscles for decades. I want to share a quick story from the book. Dr. van der Kolk talks about a patient who had been in therapy for years for severe anxiety. She knew exactly why she was anxious. Her mother was critical, her father was absent. She had all the insights, but she was still frozen. One day, they tried a different approach. They did a role-playing exercise where she physically acted out pushing against a wall, reclaiming her space. As she pushed against the wall, engaging her muscles, feeling the strength in her arms, she suddenly burst into tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Her body finally got to do what it wanted to do 30 years ago. It got to push back. It got to defend itself. The movement completed the cycle that had been stuck in her nervous system. This is the power of treating the body as the scene of the crime. We aren't just looking for clues, we are cleaning up the mess. In the next session, we're going to look at the consequences of ignoring this mess. We're going to explore how unresolved trauma disguises itself, how it gets misdiagnosed as ADHD, bipolar disorder, or borderline personality. We're going to look at why the medical system is so quick to medicate the symptom rather than listening to the story the body is trying to tell. For now, here's your takeaway. Stop trying to think your way out of your feelings. The next time you feel that familiar wave of panic or shutdown, don't ask why. Ask where. Where is it in your body? Is it a knot in the stomach, a band around the head? Just find it, put your hand on it, and say, I see you. It's okay. I'm here. Acknowledging the scene of the crime is the first step to clearing it. I'll see you in Part 5.
Part 5. Lost in Diagnosis. I want you to imagine a scenario. It's a common one. You, or maybe your child, are struggling. You feel anxious. You can't sleep. You have trouble focusing at work or school. Your moods swing wildly from high to low. You feel like you were on a roller coaster you didn't pay for. So you do the responsible thing. You go to a doctor. You go to a psychiatrist. They sit you down. They ask you a series of questions. Do you have trouble concentrating? Yes. Do you feel restless? Yes. Do you feel hopeless? Sometimes. After 20 minutes, they look at their clipboard and give you a name. Maybe they say you have ADHD. Maybe they say it's bipolar 2. Maybe they say it's major depressive disorder. Or if you are really struggling with relationships, they might whisper the heavy one, borderline personality disorder. They hand you a prescription slip. You leave with a label and a bottle of pills. For a moment, you feel relief. Finally, I know what's wrong. I have a disorder. This explains everything. But fast forward 2 years, you are taking the pills, but you don't feel healed. You feel dampened. You feel managed. And maybe now you have a second diagnosis and a third. You start to wonder, do I really have 5 different diseases? Is my brain just genetically broken in 5 different ways? Welcome to Part 5. Today, we are going to navigate the confusing maze of the mental health system. We are going to look at why trauma is the great masquerader. We are going to explore how unresolved trauma disguises itself as ADHD, depression, or behavioral problems, and why the medical model often misses the point entirely. This is a controversial topic, but it is one of the most liberating parts of Dr. van der Kolk's work. Here is the central problem. The Bible of Psychiatry, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, is a book of symptoms, not causes. It groups people based on what they do, not why they do it. Let's look at a classic example. ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. We are seeing an epidemic of ADHD diagnoses, especially in children. These kids are fidgety. They can't sit still. They can't focus on the teacher. They are impulsive. The diagnosis says, this child has a deficit of attention. Their brain can't focus. But Dr. van der Kolk asks us to look closer. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where there is domestic violence, or a home where the parents are shouting or neglecting them. That child's brain develops in a state of high alert. Their smoke detector, the amygdala, is permanently set to maximum sensitivity. Now put that child in a quiet classroom and tell them to stare at a math book for 45 minutes. Can they do it? No. But is it because they have a deficit of attention? No, it is because they are paying too much attention. They are paying attention to the teacher's tone of voice. They are paying attention to the footsteps in the hallway. They are paying attention to the other kids to make sure they are safe. Their brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do, scan for danger. To a doctor looking at a checklist, this looks like ADHD, but it isn't a learning disability. It is a survival strategy. If you treat this child with stimulants, like Ritalin, you might force them to focus. You might make them compliant. But you haven't solved the problem. You've just helped them sit still while they are terrified. Let's move to the adults. Let's talk about one of the most stigmatized labels in mental health, borderline personality disorder, BPD. If you have been given this label, you know the weight it carries. It suggests that your very personality is flawed. Doctors often dread these patients. They are seen as difficult, manipulative, or attention-seeking. People with this diagnosis often have intense mood swings. They are terrified of abandonment. They might go from idolizing a partner to hating them in the span of an hour. They might cut themselves. The medical model looks at this and says, pathology.
The trauma model looks at this and asks, what happened to you? Almost invariably, when you look at the history of someone with BPD, you find severe early trauma, you find abuse, you find neglect, you find a child who never learned that they were safe. Those manipulative behaviors, that desperate texting, that rage when someone leaves the room, that is the reaction of a terrified child inside an adult's body, screaming, "Please don't leave me alone. I will die if I am left alone." It is not a personality defect. It is a frantic attempt to soothe the nervous system. Dr. van der Kolk actually fought for years to introduce a new diagnosis into the medical books. He wanted a label that acknowledged the root cause. He wanted doctors to see that the rage, the lack of focus, the shutting down, these aren't random symptoms. They are a predictable package of responses to chronic stress. Why does this distinction matter? Why am I spending a whole session on labels? Because diagnosis drives treatment. If your doctor thinks you have a chemical imbalance in your brain called depression, they will give you a chemical solution, antidepressants. And sometimes those help. They can lift the fog. They can save lives. I am not anti-medication. But medication rarely heals trauma. Medication can dampen the smoke detector, it can lower the volume of the noise, but it cannot teach you how to feel safe. It cannot process the memories stored in your tissues. As Dr. van der Kolk says, drugs cannot do the work of processing the trauma. They can only make it easier to do the work. So if you are listening to this and you feel like you are drowning in an alphabet soup of diagnoses, I want to offer you a lifeline. Take a step back from the labels. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me, ask yourself, how did I learn to survive? That ADHD, maybe that was you learning to be hypervigilant to keep yourself safe. That social anxiety, maybe that was you learning that being invisible was safer than being seen. That depression, maybe that was your body's way of shutting down, the freeze response, when fighting back wasn't an option. When you reframe your symptoms as adaptations, you move from shame to compassion. You realize you aren't crazy. You are a survivor. Your brain worked perfectly to keep you alive in an abnormal situation. The problem is simply that the situation has changed, but your brain hasn't. You are wearing a winter coat in the middle of summer. It's not a bad coat, it just doesn't fit the weather anymore. This shift in perspective is crucial because it changes what we do next. If the problem isn't a permanent genetic defect, but an adaptation, then we can unlearn it. We don't just need pills, we need experiences. We need experiences that contradict the old programming. We need to experience safety instead of threat. We need to experience mastery instead of helplessness. We need to experience connection instead of abandonment. This leads us directly into the heart of healing. You cannot heal trauma alone. You cannot heal it in a vacuum. Since trauma often happens in relationships, abuse, neglect, betrayal, it must be healed in relationships. In the next session, we are going to talk about the foundation of safety. We are going to talk about attunement. We are going to look at how our brains are wired to connect with others and how finding a safe person or a safe group is often the most powerful medication of all. We are going to discuss why being truly seen and heard by another human being changes your biology. For today, here is your reflection task. Look at the behaviors you struggle with most, the ones you beat yourself up for, the procrastination, the anger, the spacing out. Write them down, and next to each one, write, how might this have helped me survive in the past? Try to find the logic in your madness, because there is always logic. Honoring your survival strategy is the first step to letting it go. I'll see you in Part 6.
Part 6. The Foundation of Safety. Think back to the most stressful day of your life. Maybe it was a day of terrible news, or a day when everything seemed to be falling apart. Now imagine that in the middle of that chaos, a person you deeply trust walked into the room. They didn't say anything profound. They didn't give you a 5-point plan to fix your problems. They just sat down next to you. They put a steady hand on your shoulder. They breathed deeply and slowly. What happened to your body in that moment? Chances are your own breathing slowed down. Your heart rate dropped. The world felt slightly less like a tidal wave and slightly more like a challenge you could handle. This is not magic. It is biology. It is a phenomenon called co-regulation. Welcome to part 6. Up until now, we have talked about what happens inside your brain and body, the smoke detectors, the watchtowers, the numb sensations. But humans are not closed systems. We are social animals. Our nervous systems are literally designed to be regulated by the nervous systems of the people around us. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk emphasizes that because trauma is almost always a result of a breach in human connection, whether through abuse, neglect, or the indifference of a community, the healing must also happen through human connection. You cannot think your way to safety. You have to feel safe in the presence of another. To understand why this is so powerful, we have to look at the very beginning of your life. When a baby is born, it cannot regulate its own emotions. It cannot calm itself down. If a baby is hungry or cold, its smoke detector goes off at full blast. It screams. It is in a state of total physiological emergency. How does the baby survive? A caregiver comes. The caregiver picks the baby up. They use a soft, melodic voice, which we call maternese. They look the baby in the eye. They rock the baby in a rhythmic way. The caregiver's calm nervous system borrows itself to the baby. This is called attunement. When a child is attuned to, they learn something fundamental. When I am in distress, I can reach out and someone will help me. I am not alone. I am safe. This is the birth of what psychologists call secure attachment. But what happens if the caregiver is the source of the danger? Or what happens if the caregiver is simply not there, physically or emotionally? If the caregiver is depressed or distracted or frightening, the baby's nervous system never learns how to come down from a state of alarm. They never learn that the world is a safe place to explore. Instead, they learn that other people are unpredictable, dangerous, or useless. This creates a biological foundation of insecurity. If you grew up without that steady hand, your nervous system is essentially a house built without a foundation. Every wind feels like a hurricane. Every slight feels like a catastrophe. Dr. van der Kolk explains that many people with chronic trauma suffer from what he calls a social engagement system that is broken. There is a nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. It runs from your brain all the way down to your gut. It's the reset button for your nervous system. One branch of this nerve is specifically tied to the muscles of your face and the middle ear. When you feel safe, this nerve keeps your face mobile and expressive. It allows you to tune in to the frequency of human voices. It tells your heart to beat slowly. But when you are traumatized, this system shuts down. This is why people with PTSD often have flat expressions. They look like they are wearing a mask. Their ears are tuned not for the sound of a friend's voice, but for the high-frequency sounds of a threat or the low-frequency rumble of a predator. They are physically, biologically unable to take in the comfort of others. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are bad at relationships, or if you find yourself pushing people away even when you want them close, I want you to understand, this is a vagus nerve issue. Your body is trying to protect you from the danger of intimacy. So, how do we fix a foundation that was never built? The answer is mirror neurons. Inside your brain, you have a set of cells that fire not just when you do something, but when you watch someone else do something. If you see someone smile, your mirror neurons fire as if you were smiling. If you see someone in pain, you feel a shadow of that pain. This is the basis of empathy, and it is the secret weapon of healing. To heal, you need to find safe harbors. This might be a therapist, yes, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a partner, a close friend, or even a community of people who are all working on the same thing. When you sit with someone who is truly present with you, someone who isn't judging you, isn't trying to fix you, but is simply witnessing you, your mirror neurons start to pick up on their calm. You begin to co-regulate.
This is why Dr. Kolk is such a strong advocate for group therapy. When you are in a room with others who have walked the same fire and you see them survive and you see them breathe, your body realizes, if they are safe, maybe I am safe. But there is a catch. For a traumatized person, safety is often the most terrifying feeling in the world. Why? Because to be safe is to be vulnerable. To let your guard down is to risk being hurt again. For many, the high alert state feels like a protective armor. Taking it off feels like being naked in a battlefield. If you have spent your life being hyper-vigilant, relaxing feels like a trap. This is why the foundation of safety must be built slowly. We don't demand trust, we earn it through predictability. Trauma is the ultimate unpredictability. Healing is found in the boring and the steady. It is the therapist who is always there at 10 a.m. It is the friend who always texts back. It is the partner who doesn't blow up when you make a mistake. Slowly, through these repeated experiences of safety, your nervous system begins to rewrite its rules. It starts to believe that the world has changed. I want to give you a specific concept to take away today: the window of tolerance. Imagine two lines. The space between them is your window of tolerance. This is where you can handle life. You can feel emotions, you can think, you can connect. Above the window is hyperarousal, the smoke detector. This is where you are anxious, angry, and panicked. Below the window is hypoarousal, the numbness. This is where you shut down, collapse, and feel nothing. Trauma shrinks your window. It becomes a tiny sliver. You bounce from screaming to numb with nothing in between. The goal of human connection, of co-regulation, is to widen that window. By being with safe people, you learn to stay in the window for longer and longer. You learn that you can feel a little bit of anger without exploding. You can feel a little bit of sadness without disappearing. So here is your practice for this session. I want you to identify your safety signals. Think of one person or even one animal in whose presence you feel just 5% more relaxed. It doesn't have to be a perfect relationship, just someone who doesn't trigger your alarm. What is it about them? Is it the way they listen? Is it the way they sit? Is it their voice? The next time you are with them, I want you to consciously notice that 5% shift. Don't just let it happen, observe it. Say to yourself, my heart is beating a little slower right now. I am co-regulating. You are beginning to pour the concrete for your new foundation. In the next part, we're going to talk about what you can do when you are alone. We're going to move into bottom-up healing. We're going to talk about yoga, movement, and how to use your own body to talk back to your brain. We're going to learn how to move from being a victim of your sensations to being the master of them. I'll see you in Part 7.
Part 7. Befriending the Body. Bottom-up healing. Most people who have survived trauma live their lives as if they are a severed head. Think about that for a second. You live in your thoughts. You live in your worries. You live in your plans and your memories. And the body? The body is just a meat vehicle that carries your head from one meeting to the next. When your body feels like a source of pain or a source of unpredictable panic, it makes sense to move out. You become a squatter in your own mind, trying to ignore the downstairs because the downstairs is where the ghosts live. But as we have learned, the body keeps the score. You can move out, but the body stays behind, holding the tension, holding the trauma, and eventually making you sick. Welcome to Part 7. Today, we are going to talk about the most practical and perhaps the most challenging part of the journey, coming back home. We are going to talk about bottom-up healing. In our earlier sessions, we talked about why top-down methods, using your logic to talk to your feelings, often fail when the smoke detector is screaming. Bottom-up healing is the reverse. It is using the body to talk to the brain. If you can't tell your heart to stop racing, what if you could move your body in a way that forced your heart to slow down? If you can't tell your brain that the danger is over, what if you could show your nervous system that you are in control? Dr. Bessel van der Kolk is a pioneer in this. He was one of the first major researchers to suggest that things like yoga, tai chi, and rhythmic movement aren't just hobbies, they are essential clinical interventions for PTSD. Let's look at why. The key is the vagus nerve. We touched on this in part 6, but let's go deeper. About 80% of the fibers in the vagus nerve are afferent. That's a fancy way of saying they move up. They carry information from the heart, lungs, and gut up to the brain. Only 20% move down. This means your brain is spending most of its time listening to your body, not the other way around. If your gut is tight and your breathing is shallow, your brain thinks, I must be in danger. It doesn't matter if you are sitting in a peaceful garden. The brain believes the body. So the first step of bottom-up healing is learning to befriend the sensation. Dr. van der Kolk conducted a famous study on yoga and trauma. He found that for many survivors, yoga was more effective than any medication on the market. Now, I'm not talking about fitness yoga. I'm talking about embodied yoga. The goal of this kind of movement isn't to get a beach body. The goal is to notice what is happening inside. Imagine you are in a pose, maybe a simple stretch. Your teacher says, notice the tension in your left hip. Don't try to change it, just notice it. For a traumatized person, this is revolutionary. Usually, when we feel tension, we panic. We think, oh no, here comes the anxiety, I have to stop this. But in yoga, you learn to sit with the sensation. You breathe into it. You realize, my hip is tight. It's uncomfortable, but I am still breathing. I am still here. I am not dying. Every time you do this, you are recalibrating your smoke detector. You are showing your amygdala that sensation does not equal catastrophe. You are building interoception, that internal sense of self we talked about in part 3. But there is a second, even more powerful reason why movement heals: agency. Trauma, by definition, is a state of utter helplessness. It is the experience of being done to. You couldn't fight, you couldn't run, your body was paralyzed. That feeling of, I can't do anything, gets stuck in the nervous system. It's what we call learned helplessness. When you engage in mindful movement, whether it's yoga or kickboxing or even just walking with intention, you are practicing agency. You are saying, I am moving my arm because I choose to move my arm. I am taking up space because I choose to take up space. You are physically contradicting the trauma. You are proving to your primitive brain that you are no longer a victim. You are the pilot. Let's talk about the most direct hack we have for the nervous system: the breath. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system that you can control consciously. You can't consciously tell your liver to produce more bile. You can't tell your pupils to dilate, but you can choose how to breathe. As we mentioned in an earlier exercise, a long exhale is the off switch for the stress response. When you exhale slowly, you stimulate the vagus nerve. You send a signal to the heart to slow down. The heart sends a signal to the brain saying, all clear, we can relax now. If you do this for just 2 minutes, you can physically move your brain from a state of high alert to a state of social engagement. This is why Dr. van der Kolk emphasizes that healing requires us to become masters of our own physiology. It's not enough to have a therapist who understands you. You have to understand your own weather system. You have to know when a storm is coming and know exactly which physical tools can help you weather it. I want to share a story about a veteran Dr. van der Kolk worked with. This man was plagued by flashback rages. He would get triggered by a noise and find himself screaming at his family. Traditional therapy helped him understand the rage, but it didn't stop it. He started a program of rhythmic drumming and Aikido, a martial art focused on redirecting energy. He learned that when he felt that heat in his chest, the early warning sign of a hijack, he could physically plant his feet, breathe out, and center his weight. He wasn't thinking his way out of the rage, he was moving his way into a different state. He said later, for the first time in 20 years, I felt like the owner of my own skin. That is the goal: ownership. So how do you start befriending the body if you've been living in your head for years? You don't start by running a marathon. You start with small, low-stakes check-ins. Here is your practice for today. It's a technique called body scanning with curiosity. Find a quiet moment.
Sit or lie down. Start at your toes. Don't look for problems. Just ask, what is the temperature there? Can I feel the fabric of my socks? Is there a pulse? Move to your knees, your hips, your gut, your chest. When you hit a place that feels like tight or noisy, maybe that familiar knot in your stomach, I want you to try something different. Instead of saying, I hate this feeling, say, hello, stomach. I see you're working hard today. What are you trying to tell me? You don't need an answer. You just need to acknowledge the sensation without judgment. You are moving from being a severed head to a whole person. This is the foundation for everything that comes next. Once you can tolerate being inside your own skin, we can start to use more advanced tools like EMDR and neurofeedback to actually unstick the memories. But it all starts here, in the feet, in the breath, in the present moment. I'll see you in part 8, where we look at the high-tech side of healing, rewiring the brain's alarm system.
Part 8. Rewiring the alarm system. Have you ever had a computer that just froze? The cursor won't move, the keyboard is unresponsive, you can see the document you are working on, but you can't edit it, you can't close the window. The system is stuck in a loop, spinning its wheels, consuming all the battery life, but accomplishing nothing. In the world of computers, when this happens, we don't try to talk to the software, we don't try to reason with the keyboard, we do a hard reset. We clear the cache. We force the hardware to look at the data again from scratch. Up until now, we have talked about understanding the brain and befriending the body. But today, we are going to look at the hard reset for trauma. Welcome to Part 8. We are going to explore two of the most groundbreaking and often misunderstood treatments in Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's arsenal, EMDR and neurofeedback. These are treatments that bypass the thinking brain entirely and go straight to the wiring. Let's start with EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. When EMDR was first discovered by Dr. Francine Shapiro, it sounded like pseudoscience. The idea was simple. If you think about a traumatic memory while moving your eyes back and forth, following a finger or light, the trauma loses its power. It sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? How can moving your eyes fix a shattered soul? But Dr. van der Kolk was one of the first researchers to prove that it actually works, and the reason why is fascinating. Remember how we talked about implicit memory? How trauma gets stuck in the amygdala as a raw physical sensation rather than a story? When you are in a state of trauma, the two halves of your brain, the left, logical, linguistic, and the right, emotional, sensory, stop communicating effectively. The trauma gets locked in the right brain. It's a fragment of a memory that never got a timestamp. When you engage in bilateral stimulation, moving your eyes left to right, or feeling taps on your left and right hands, you are forcing the two hemispheres of your brain to talk to each other. It's like a scanning process. The eye movements mimic what happens during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. During REM sleep, our brains process the events of the day, turning experiences into memories and filing them away. Trauma is an experience that was too big to be filed. It's like a massive file that crashed the system. EMDR restarts the filing process. By focusing on the trauma while the eyes move, you are allowing the logical left brain to finally see the emotional right brain's data. You are adding a timestamp to the memory. You are telling the brain, this happened. It was bad, but it is in the past. People who go through successful EMDR don't forget the trauma, but the charge is gone. They can tell the story without their heart racing. They move from it is happening to it happened. But what if the problem isn't just a specific memory? What if the problem is that your brain's baseline is just wrong? What if your brain has spent so many years in survival mode that it has forgotten how to be calm? This brings us to neurofeedback. Every thought, every emotion, and every state of being you have is associated with a specific brainwave frequency. Beta waves are for active thinking and focus. Alpha waves are for relaxed awareness.
Theta waves are for deep relaxation and dreaming. In a healthy brain, these waves are flexible. You can ramp up to beta when you need to work and drop down to alpha when you want to rest. But in a traumatized brain, the frequencies get stuck. Many survivors live in a state of permanent high beta. Their brain is vibrating at a frequency of imminent danger even when they're sleeping, or they might be stuck in a foggy state, unable to produce the waves needed for focus. Neurofeedback is waitlisting for the brain. You sit in a chair with sensors on your scalp. These sensors don't put anything into your brain, they just listen. They show your brainwaves on a computer screen. You might play a simple video game where the car only moves forward when your brain produces calm alpha waves. Your brain loves rewards. It wants the car to move, so without you even trying, your brain starts to figure out how to produce those calm frequencies. It's subconscious learning. Dr. Kolk tells the story of a young boy who had been so traumatized he was violent, couldn't focus, and was failing out of school. Medications did nothing but make him a zombie. After several sessions of neurofeedback, the boy started to change. He became quieter. He started to draw. He said something profound. "I feel like I have a pause button now." That pause button is the medial prefrontal cortex, the Watchtower, coming back online. Neurofeedback literally retrains the brain's electrical patterns so that safety becomes a physical possibility again. Now, why am I telling you about these high-tech treatments? Because many people blame themselves for not being able to will themselves into being better. They think if they were just stronger or more disciplined, they wouldn't be so anxious. But you cannot will your brainwaves to change, just as you cannot will your blood pressure to drop. Sometimes the hardware needs a technician. If you have tried talk therapy and it hasn't worked, if you have tried meditation and it just makes you more anxious, it might be because your smoke detector is so loud it's drowning out your ability to practice. These tools, EMDR and neurofeedback, are not cheating. They are ways to lower the volume of the alarm so that you can finally start the work of healing. They provide the window of opportunity where the other things, like yoga, connection, self-reflection, can actually take root. I want to be clear, these aren't magic bullets. They are part of a larger ecosystem of healing, but they represent a massive shift in how we treat the human soul. We are moving away from what is wrong with your personality to how can we help your brain function the way it was meant to. So what can you do if you don't have access to an EMDR therapist or a neurofeedback clinic right now? You can practice the principle of alternating focus. The core of EMDR is bilateral stimulation. You can actually do a very mild version of this yourself to calm your nervous system when you feel a hijack coming on. It's called the butterfly hug. Cross your arms over your chest so your right hand is on your left upper arm or shoulder and your left hand is on your right. Slowly, rhythmically, tap your hands like the wings of a butterfly. Left, right, left, right. As you tap, focus on your breath. This simple bilateral movement encourages the two sides of your brain to sync up. It signals to your nervous system that you are present and safe. You are gently rewiring the alarm one tap at a time. In the next part, we are going to look at the communal side of healing. We are going to talk about finding your voice and tribe. We are going to look at why singing in a choir, acting in a play, or being part of a team is actually a biological necessity for trauma recovery. I'll see you in Part 9.
Part 9. Finding your voice and tribe. Trauma is a master of isolation. It whispers to you that you are different. It tells you that if people really knew what was going on inside your head, the shame, the rage, the brokenness, they would turn away in horror. So, you learn to hide. You become an expert at wearing a mask. You keep people at a distance because distance feels like safety. But there is a high price for that distance. As Dr. Bessel Kolk often says, trauma isolates, healing happens in community. Welcome to Part 9. Today, we are going to talk about the final frontier of recovery, moving from the I to the we. We're going to explore why things like theater, choral singing, and communal rhythms are not just extracurricular activities, they are biological necessities for a traumatized nervous system. Because you can have the best therapist in the world and the most regulated brainwaves, but if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, if you don't feel like your voice matters in a group, the healing isn't complete. Let's talk about synchrony. Have you ever noticed how good it feels to walk in step with a friend? Or the strange primal rush of being in a crowd at a concert where everyone is clapping to the same beat? That feeling is your nervous system syncing up with others. When we move together, whether it's dancing, marching, or drumming, our individual boundaries soften. We start to feel part of something larger than ourselves. For a person with trauma, whose nervous system is stuck in a me-against-the-world defensive crouch, this is incredibly healing. It tells your amygdala, you don't have to carry the weight of the world alone. There is a rhythm here, and you are part of it. Dr. van der Kolk spent years studying the effects of theater on traumatized individuals, particularly at-risk youth and veterans. You might wonder, why theater? Why would someone who is already struggling with their identity want to play a character? The answer is profound. In a play, you are given a script. You are given a role. This allows you to try on emotions and behaviors that feel too dangerous in real life. If you are a person who has spent your life being small and quiet to avoid conflict, playing a king or a warrior on stage allows you to feel what it's like to have a powerful voice. It allows you to practice setting boundaries. It allows you to scream, to cry, or to laugh loudly within the safety of the play. Your brain doesn't fully know the difference between acting powerful and being powerful. The physical act of standing tall and speaking clearly rewires your self-perception. But more importantly, theater requires you to be in constant attunement with others. You have to watch your scene partner. You have to listen for your cue. You have to react to their movements. You are practicing that social engagement system we talked about in Part 6. You are learning to trust that when you speak, someone will answer. Then there is the power of the voice. Many survivors struggle with literally finding their voice. They might have a tight throat, a weak voice, or they might struggle to find the words to express their needs. Dr. van der Kolk found that singing, especially in a choir, is a direct intervention for this. Think about what happens when you sing. You have to take deep, rhythmic breaths. You have to vibrate your vocal cords. You have to listen to the pitch of those around you and adjust your own voice to harmonize. Singing is a vagal workout. It stimulates the nerves in your throat and chest that tell your brain to relax. And when you harmonize with others, your heart rates actually begin to beat in unison. You are no longer a living ghost haunting your own life. You are a physical, vibrating part of a tribe. This communal healing is what's missing from so much of modern medicine. We live in a world that tells us to fix ourselves in private. We go to a private office, talk to a private doctor, and take a private pill. But humans were never meant to process grief in isolation. In traditional cultures, when something terrible happened, the community didn't send the victim away to a clinic. They held a ceremony. They danced, they sang, they told stories. They wrapped the individual in the rhythm of the tribe until they felt safe enough to come back. Dr. van der Kolk shares a story about a project called the Possibility Project, where teenagers from violent backgrounds wrote and performed a musical about their lives. These kids didn't just talk about their trauma, they sang it, they danced it, they moved through the memories together. By the end of the project, their symptoms of PTSD, the flashbacks, the aggression, the numbing, had dropped significantly. Why? Because they had transformed their silent terror into a shared narrative. They had moved from being victims of their story to being the authors and performers of it. So, how do you find your tribe when you feel like a social outcast? It doesn't have to be a theater troupe or a massive choir. It starts with any activity that involves shared rhythm and purpose.
It could be a local community garden where you work alongside others. It could be a group exercise class like CrossFit or Zumba. It could be a book club, a bowling league, or a volunteer group. The key isn't the activity, it's the rhythm. It's the act of showing up, being seen, and coordinating your actions with others. If you are feeling stuck in your healing, I want to challenge you to look outside yourself. Where can you go to be a part of a rhythm? Where can you go to use your voice? Not to talk about your pain, but just to let your voice be heard. For today's practice, I want you to experiment with shared sound. If you are alone, put on a song you love, one that has a strong, steady beat. Don't just listen to it, hum along. Feel the vibration in your chest and throat. If you are with someone you trust, try to breathe in sync with them for just 1 minute. Don't make it weird. Just notice their inhale and try to match yours to it. Notice how that tiny act of syncing makes you feel. You are practicing for the tribe. You are reminding your nervous system that you were built for connection. In our final session, we're going to tie everything together. We're going to talk about the new narrative. We're going to look at how to move from survivor to thriver. We're going to discuss how to create a future that is informed by your past, but no longer dictated by it. I'll see you in Part 10.
Part 10. The New Narrative. What if I told you that you don't have to forget what happened to you in order to be free of it? There is a common misconception about healing. We think that getting over it means the memories should fade until they are gone, or that we should reach a state where we never feel the sting of the past again. We wait for a day when the slate is wiped clean, but that day never comes because your life isn't a chalkboard, it's a tapestry. Healing isn't about erasing the dark threads. It's about weaving so many new vibrant colors into the fabric that the dark threads become part of a much larger, much more beautiful pattern. Welcome to the final session of our masterclass. Today, we are talking about integration. We have spent 9 sessions looking at the pieces of the puzzle. We've looked at the brain, the body, the labels, and the tribe. Now we are going to look at how to put those pieces together to form a new narrative. We are going to move from the identity of a victim through the stage of a survivor and finally into the life of a thriver. Dr. van der Kolk emphasizes that the final goal of trauma treatment is to live fully in the present without being constantly hijacked by the past. But to do that, we have to address the internal family. As we heal, we often discover that we aren't just one self. We are made of many parts. There is the part of you that is a competent professional. There is the part of you that is a loving parent. But there is also the part of you that is still a terrified 6-year-old, or a shamed teenager, or a frozen witness. Trauma forces these parts into silos. The safe adult you and the traumatized child you live in the same body, but they don't talk to each other. When you get triggered, the child takes over the steering wheel, and the adult is pushed into the trunk. Integration is the process of the adult taking the child by the hand and saying, "I see you. I know you were scared, but look around. I am 40 years old now. I have a home. I have friends. I am the one in charge now, and I promise to keep us safe." This is the creation of a linear narrative. Remember how we said trauma is timeless? To the amygdala, the trauma is always happening now. Healing is the act of putting the trauma on a calendar. It is moving the event from the current events folder to the history folder. You do this by telling your story, not as a victim who is still drowning, but as a witness who has reached the shore. Dr. van der Kolk talks about the importance of mastery. To move forward, you need to have experiences that prove you are no longer helpless. This is why we focus so much on the body. Every time you hold a difficult yoga pose, every time you successfully use your breath to calm a panic attack, every time you set a firm boundary with a difficult person, you are writing a new page in your story. You are proving to your nervous system that the score has changed. But there is a final, deeper level to this journey. It's called post-traumatic growth.
It's the radical idea that you don't just get back to normal, you become something better than normal. People who have done the hard work of integrating their trauma often develop a level of empathy, a depth of character, and a clarity of purpose that they never would have had otherwise. Because you have seen the darkness, you appreciate the light more than anyone else. Because you have felt the pain of isolation, you cherish connection more deeply. You become like kintsugi, the Japanese art of fixing broken pottery with gold. The vessel is more valuable because it was broken. The cracks don't hide the history, they highlight the resilience. So, how do you begin this final stage? How do you write your new narrative? It starts with the words you use. For a long time, your story might have been, I am a person who was hurt, and therefore I am broken, and the world is dangerous. The new narrative sounds like this. I am a person who survived something incredibly difficult. My body protected me using the only tools it had. Now I am learning new tools. I am the owner of my skin, and I am building a life based on safety, connection, and joy. Notice the shift. You aren't denying the past. You are acknowledging the strength it took to survive it. As we close this series, I want to leave you with a roadmap for the days ahead. Healing is not a straight line. You will have days where the smoke detector goes off for no reason. You will have days where you feel that old familiar numbness. That doesn't mean you are failing. It just means you are human. When those days come, I want you to remember the 4 pillars we've built. Check the Watchtower. Remind yourself that this is a memory, not a reality. Listen to the body. Use your breath to signal safety to your nervous system. Find the tribe. Reach out. Don't process the storm in isolation. And practice agency. Do one small thing that reminds you that you are in control. You are not the things that happen to you. You are the one who survived them. You are the architect of what happens next. Dr. Kolk ends his book with a powerful reminder. The greatest hope for all of us is to be able to feel what we feel and know what we know without being overwhelmed by it. You have the knowledge now. You have the tools. The body has kept the score, but you are finally the one holding the pen. Go gently, go slowly, but keep going. The world is waiting for the version of you that is no longer hiding. Thank you for walking this path with me.